President Biden set to deliver a rare primetime address from the Oval Office this evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. He's expected to address the administration's response to Hamas terrorist attacks against Israel and Russia's war in Ukraine. But we begin with the massive pro-Palestinian protest on Capitol Hill. I think it's more accurate to call it pro-Hamas. Protesters swarmed the Cannon Rotunda, demanding a ceasefire. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm McEnany, here with my co-host, Emily Campagno. Also joining us, Fox Business anchor and co-host of The Bottom Line, Dagan McDowell, director of the Tech Policy Center at the Heritage Foundation, Kara Frederick, and host of Making Money on Fox Business and author of Unbreakable Investor, Charles Payne. Well, you're looking at video from inside the Cannon office building, which showed a large group chanting "Ceasefire now" and calling for Congress to demand the fighting stop in Israel. Now, let's remind you, ceasefire now. It was Israel that was attacked, whose children were lit on fire. It is Israel whose people were killed. And you have a right to self-defense. The laws of war state that. The United Nations states that. But ceasefire now, they scream. The protesters were spotted wearing black T-shirts, reading "Jews say ceasefire now." The protest followed a speech by Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who has repeated the lie that Israel was behind the explosion near a Gaza hospital. Here she is outside the Capitol.
It's just continue to watch people think it's okay to bomb a hospital where children. You know what's so hard sometimes is watching those videos and the people telling the kids don't cry. President Biden, not all America's with you on this.
Remember when she was chased down the hall and asked if she condemned the killing of children? She refused to do that, and it was our own Hillary Vaughn who tracked her down. She joins us live from Capitol Hill with more. Hillary.
Kaylee, well, progressive Congresswomen Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib were quick to condemn the hospital attack in Gaza when they thought Israel was behind it, but slow to correct the record now that we know that a Palestinian militant group is to blame for that. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar issuing a clarification to her tweet late last night, but her post with the misinformation saying Israel is guilty is still up. And so is Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib's post as well. Tlaib was rallying with pro-Palestinian protesters yesterday at the Capitol and blamed President Biden for not speaking up for Palestinian lives.
President Biden, not all America's with you on this one. And you need to wake up and understand that. We are literally watching people commit genocide and killing the vast majority just like this. And we still stand by and say nothing.
But Tlaib herself didn't speak up when I tried to ask her about Israeli children being slaughtered. She said nothing at the time. Tlaib and Omar and about a dozen House Democrats are supporting a ceasefire resolution, but that idea is being shot down on the other side of the Capitol by Senate Democrat John Fetterman, who says now is not the time to talk about a ceasefire, also calling it, quote, disturbing that some of his Democratic colleagues would take a terrorist word over our key ally when it comes to who is to blame for the hospital blast. I asked Democrats supporting the ceasefire resolution why they don't think Israel has a right to fight back. Why do you think Israel does not have a right to defend itself?
Oh, it does and it will.
Why did you call for a ceasefire then?
Trying to save lives.
Do you think that Israel does not have a right to defend itself?
I've never said that.
Do you think they do have a right to defend themselves?
I think that it's important that everyone has a right to defend themselves against heinous acts. I think that proportionality matters.
And in the Senate, Leader Schumer says that if Hamas is left to its own devices, they will repeat the same attack that they have and will continue to until they're stopped. Kaylee?
Hillary, thank you. So I never thought John Fetterman would be the rational one, but here we are. That's how far left some elected Democrats are. I want to walk down memory lane. Here's President Biden in 2021. He had some pointed remarks of praise for the squad.
AOC is brilliant, and the other three women we're talking about are really smart. Rashid Tlaib, where's Rashid? I tell you what, Rashid, I want to say to you that I admire your intellect, I admire your passion, and I admire your concern for for so many other people. You're a fighter.
So praising Rashida Tlaib, that was in 2021. I do want to point out Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre condemned them after the Israel attack, the attack on Israel. Watch the press secretary.
There have been some members of Congress who have called for a ceasefire, and they have not gone as far as backing the administration's call for support for Israel.
We're going to continue to be very clear. We believe they're wrong. We believe they're repugnant, and we believe they're disgraceful. Our condemnation belongs squarely with terrorists who have brutally murdered, raped, kidnapped hundreds of Israelis. There can be no equivocation about that. There are not two sides here. There are not two sides.
There are not two sides. Karine Jean-Pierre is right, Charles Payne. The press secretary condemned it, but in the wake of President Biden previously praising the members of the squad, I could tell you if I was press secretary and I had condemned these members, but President Trump had not, there would be reporters running up to my office until you heard from President Trump a condemnation. I don't see that kind of pressure here, and there should be that kind of pressure on the president.
You wouldn't have gotten out of the room. You would not have gotten out of the room. And let's be honest. When President Biden was over there yesterday, he said some of the right words, but he also didn't have to sort of, you can argue, obviously, that we're with Israel part, but he didn't mention Iran at all. And I don't think he articulated the barbaric, how barbaric Hamas is. And then, of course, control your rage. All of these sort of, it's the same thing as almost saying ceasefire. I mean, it's a sort of don't go too far. One of the lawmakers is saying it should be proportional. No, those are the kind of things that terrorists and these evil factions have been doing. They took advantage of us. We learned in America in 9/11. Someone gets on a plane with a box cutter. No, we're not going to fly to Cuba. We're going to whip you. We're going to beat you down right there. You're not going to ever take a plane. You're never going to harm us. We learned the hard way. Israel has learned the hard way. It won't be proportional. We have to make sure it never happens again, period.
No doubt about it. And Emily, where you have Ilhan Omar not deleting the tweet, but saying she was wrong, now Rashida Tlaib has retweeted something, doubling down on her lies about Israel being behind this attack. She's retweeted Dan Cohen saying this. Hanania Naftali proudly boasted that Israel bombed Gaza's Al-Ali hospital before deleting and 2 minutes later lying that Hamas did it. So she is running with this lie in the face of Senate intel, in the face of President Biden saying he's seen DOD data, in the face of the Israeli government. The data is there. Her own party acknowledges the truth, but here she is yet again.
I can't think of a larger waste of a congressional seat than hers for so many reasons, including the fact that she perpetuates a horrible anti-Semitic position, doubles down on it, and as you pointed out, loves to flee when Hillary Vaughn asks her a question, but loves to hog the mic when it's her time to propagate those lies. The Wall Street Journal editorial board did a really excellent job, I felt, of sort of providing some color into how that was so damaging. And think about how, as just like Rashida Tlaib did, people ran with Hamas's lie to underscore the point. So for some reason, we're supposed to take a terrorist group at their word after they've butchered babies. Oh, right, that's right, but they don't lie. That is so nonsensical to me. And yet that's exactly what the BBC, when they put in print, they said, there's no different conclusion. It's hard to see what else this could be, they said, talking about the hospital bombing, other than an Israeli airstrike or several airstrikes, given the size of the explosion. So they are ascribing, given the horrific nature of it, the size, that it must be Israel. That kind of deduction, which had nothing to do even with evidence whatsoever, based on their own skewed ratio, that's something that emanated around the world. I'm glad Omar Correct. But I'm so disappointed that the Western media and the mainstream media jumped on this. And to your point about the proportionality, I also really appreciated the point the editorial board made, which is that it is Western unilateral disarmament. That is the position that says there is no collateral damage and also it needs to be proportionate. Again, this is against the landscape of a butchery and an inhumane atrocity that we've never seen before, frankly. It surpasses ISIS. And yet Israel is supposed to gird their loins and be mute and quiet and contained and restrained so that one civilian is not even killed. That, again, is a position of disarmament unilaterally, and it's a Western focus that has no place here, not only for the purpose of Israel fighting back, but also the way that they will.
And Dagan, Rashida Tlaib, she is putting forward terrorist talking points,
Yes.
okay? So it was terrorists who bombed the hospital parking lot, and we don't know if children were among those, but if Gazan children died, it is because of terrorists. Look at this wall right now. These are children who Rashida Tlaib would prefer to ignore while enabling this activity by spewing Hamas talking points. Meet Kafir. He's 9 months old. Look at this beautiful boy. He's now a hostage of Hamas, who a sitting member of Congress is carrying water for. Meet his brother, Ariel, right beside him, that beautiful little boy who just got a haircut. Meet Raz and Aviv, 5 and 3 years old. These are hostages, and a sitting member of Congress is carrying water, spewing talking points for an organization holding these children and their mothers.
So Rashida Tlaib, her tears yesterday were about a bombing that did not happen and children who did not die. And it was a stark contrast to how she reacted, and you brought this up, when she was confronted with the factual murder, barbaric murder of Jews in Israel on October the 7th. She gave those murdered Jewish children and mothers and families her back, her silence, as she scurried as fast as she could into a private elevator. We have long known that she is a vile, irredeemable hater of all Jews. And she has always wanted exactly what Hamas wants, and that's all Jews to be removed from Israel, from the river to the sea, period. So the story is no longer this woman. The story is the Democrats. They have an anti-Semitism problem on their hands. And in fact, Abigail Shrier wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in 2019 that said that exact same thing. That was about Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib. They're still in Congress. So few are speaking up. Congressman Moskowitz is speaking up. But yesterday, Hakeem Jeffries was asked by the National Review about Rashida Tlaib specifically. And he said he hadn't seen her tweets. Yeah. That was his only response. At every turn, every Democrat needs to be confronted, not just with this moment from Rashida Tlaib, but everything that she has said that demonstrates her anti-Semitism and, again, propaganda for terrorists. But everything that she says from this day forward.
And in 2019, when Democrats were confronted with the anti-Semitism, they were unable to pass a resolution cleanly condemning anti-Semitism, leading a member of their own party to say, why can't we call out anti-Semitism and show we've learned the lessons of history? We all should be able to do that. Pretty easy to do when there are babies who were killed.